Welcome back to the Politics and Media Show. Elections for the new police and crime commissioners will take place in 41 areas of the UK in a couple of weeks' time. The commissioners will appoint the chief constable in the area, set out local policing priorities, control the budget and submit annual progress reports. But despite these considerable powers, the commissioner elections are failing to spark much public interest. So will this leave commissioners without a popular mandate? Are they a good idea anyway? Former Metropolitan Police Chief Lord Ian Blair doesn't think so. He caused a stir last week when he told people not to vote in the elections in a bid to stop the reforms. But with 6 far-right candidates standing, should Muslim voters be making extra sure that their voices are heard? With me to discuss the issues are Brian Paddick, former Deputy Assistant Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, and Azad Ali, familiar to many people here from the Islam Channel, but also Head of the Community Development and Engagement at Engage. On the phone, we're joined by Professor Ian Loader, Director of the Centre for Criminology at Oxford University. OK, Brian, what do you reckon? Is this going to be an improvement or not?
I don't think it is, but we are where we are. These elections are going to take place. We are going to get police and crime commissioners, and therefore it's very important that people have their say, that their voices are heard.
What do you think Ian Blair was up to then when he was saying that people shouldn't vote?
Well, I think naively he was thinking that if there was a very, very low turnout, that maybe the government would abandon one of their flagship policies. Of course, that's not going to happen. It's not a good idea. I agree with Lord Blair as far as that's concerned. But if ordinary people, reasonable people, do not turn up and vote, and extremists do, then their voice is going to be heard above the voice of reason. And we could be in considerable trouble because these people, as you say, have a great deal of power.
OK. Azad, I mean, that must be your concern. I mean, Engage is about getting people into the political process.
Yeah, I mean, the slogan we have and the website we have is get out and vote, exactly for that. And I think Brian speaks for the majority of the people when he says a lot of people were against this idea in the first place, because it does put the police in danger of being politicised. As you said, you know, far-reaching powers. The commissioner will have the right to appoint or fire the chief constable in his or her area. So these are very powerful powers that an individual will have. However, the government has not done enough to publicise this. It has not invested the right amount of money to make sure that people around the country, specifically England and Wales, know what's happening, when it's happening, and what it involves. Traditionally, most people are not engaged with the police on a daily basis. It's only when it affects them. So for ordinary citizens, and the other very important thing to understand is to do with constabularies. So the boundaries of how big the constituency is very, very big. So if you take like West Midlands, for example, there's 7 councils that are involved in that. So it's a huge territory, huge area. So really investing in the money that was required to advertise, to inform people was not done by the government. Only recently has the national adverts gone out on television. But a lot of people have commented that the adverts, they don't really inform you enough. They're a bit scary anyway. So it's almost trying to scare people into these elections. So yes, I mean, we're very concerned that the right wing will have a presence in this. As you rightly mentioned, there are 6 candidates. But we also believe there are now, slowly it's picking up, that there are going to be a number of people that will come up. And hopefully, you know, the Electoral Commission said there's going to be around 18% turnout. Hopefully we'll, you know, get more than that.
Professor Ian Loader from Oxford University, let me bring you into the discussion. Do you think these reforms are a good idea? And if they are, why is there so little interest in them?
My view has always been that these reforms are a flawed way of trying to give effect to 3 important principles. I think they're one way of trying to make the police more responsive to the various publics that they serve. I think it's only right in a democracy that key strategic decisions about how public services spend their money and determine their priorities are made by elected politicians and not by unelected officials, in this case chief constables. And I think it's important to remember that we live at a time where public trust in politicians and in the political process is at an all-time low. And faced with that prospect, you can just carry on doing the old things in the old ways, or you can try and experiment and create new institutions and find new ways of engaging people in the political process. And I think we should see the idea of a police commissioner as one way of doing that. The flaw is trying to do this through the medium of one person who will have an enormous amount of power, and I think some of the critics have said it's quite difficult to see how this person will represent everybody living in such large constituencies. Have it spot on. But we're in uncharted territory. We've never in this country before elected someone to run a single public service, and we really don't know what's going to happen. And I think there's all kinds of reasons, if you take that as a whole, why we really want to encourage as many people as possible to vote.
Brian, I mean, do you have a problem with the principle of elected law officers? I mean, I think for many people, it's one of the things that they kind of admire in what they might otherwise think of as a flawed democracy in America, the fact that they have this process of electing at least some law officers. Are you against the principle or just this particular version of it?
I think it's absolutely essential that the police become more responsive to the needs of local communities, that it's not the police themselves that set the priorities and decide what policing service is delivered, but it is the democratic representatives of the people who do that. But as Ian has just said, the real danger is concentrating that power in one individual. I mean, people know about the tyranny of democracy anyway. It is not a good system for representing the views of minorities. And what we suggested, what the Liberal Democrat Party suggested, was having directly elected police authorities where the police force boundary was not coterminous with the local authority boundary. If it was, you could have locally elected councillors forming the police authority. It is this issue of having potentially extremists or just people who can't possibly take into account the whole range of different communities' needs. As has been said, the West Midlands, for example. I mean, it is very, very diverse communities throughout the West Midlands. How one person can represent all of those different individuals is very difficult to see.
I mean, Azad, you've already mentioned it. Brian's said it again. The sheer size of the constituencies here. I mean, in a way, it kind of undermines the whole idea that this is democratic representation, because there can't be effective democratic representation in a constituency that big.
Yeah, no, absolutely, there can't be. And the sensible way to do this would have been to have a wider number of candidates that will kind of run the police like an elected police authority. That would have been a good idea. And I mean, Ian is right that this is the first time we're directly electing someone to run a public body. But in essence, the police has always been run by politicians through the Home Office and locally through the local council. So the local council would set, policing priorities with the in London, borough commanders, outside chief constables. So that kind of model does exist. Now, the danger here is, what we've seen is, it hasn't caught the public's imagination. If you look at the candidates that are standing, if you look at how the entire system has shaped itself, before you had what was known as police authorities, you had an umbrella organisation called Association of Police Authorities. Now you have police crime commissioners and an umbrella organisation called Association of Police Crime Commissioners. It's the same people. Nothing has changed in essence. All that's happening is in the local level, people will elect an individual. But then you've got to come on to checks and balances. As Brian rightly mentions, there are minority communities who may feel their voice isn't heard. How is one individual going to travel around so much of the country and hear the voices of the individuals and then take that on board? What are the checks and balances put in place for that?
And as Ian said, this is an experiment. Now, to have 41 experiments across the country, and it being the police service that is the experiment of having elected people to run a public service, is a very, very high-risk strategy, let alone even if large numbers of people do turn out to vote, because it's never been done before. So this is very risky territory.
Isn't there a different model here in the capital? Because the relationship with the GLA provides a different model, doesn't it?
Well, in the capital, it's the Mayor of London who is the Police and Crime Commissioner, and he has delegated that job to a Deputy Mayor for Crime and Policing, and that individual's actions are overseen by a committee of the Greater London Authority of the London Assembly. But there are all sorts of problems already in London. The committee of the London Assembly are being told they can't hold the Commissioner of the Met or his senior officers to account. The Deputy Mayor for Crime and Policing says their job is only to hold him to account, and he is the sole individual who will hold the police to account.
Ian, do you think that same argument might now begin to be used by the police commissioners? That it's not the police, it's me?
There is that risk. There's going to be a number, I think, of potential conflicts around the relationship between police and crime commissioners and their chief constables, especially with regard to, well, on the one hand, who takes the credit for success, and who takes the blame for failure. And insofar as there is a kind of connection back to the American situation here, that some of the examples one can think of there, most obviously in New York, aren't encouraging ones. I will add this. I think there are too many people around at the moment who are willing this experiment to fail. And I think Ian Blair's ill-advised remarks encouraging people not to vote animated from that point of view. I think there are flaws with this model, but I think all of us have got a responsibility to try and make it work. And that involves trying to actively engage as many people in the electoral process as possible to maximise the turnout. We're also understandably focusing on the elections at the moment, but we mustn't lose sight of the fact that what the commissioner does, these commissioners do when they're in office, is also going to be of vital importance, both in terms of drawing up their crime plans, and in terms they're going to have a budget. The budget for victim services is going to come to police and crime commissioners. So I think there's a job of trying to engage the public not only in the electoral process, but engaging the public in the processes, such processes of consultation, and there is a statutory obligation for commissioners to do this, when they come to drawing up their crime plans and when they start spending their budgets.
Are you concerned that the one thing that may restrict access and participation from the side of people standing as candidates is the £5,000 deposit? I mean, that will seem to many ordinary people like a hell of a lot of money, and we know of one case already where that a supposedly independent candidate has had that money provided by a right-wing American think tank. There's a problem here, isn't there?
I think there is a problem. I think it's frankly bizarre that the level was set that high. It seems to me odd that the government, whose ambition for this proposal was to try and attract a whole series of kind of new people into politics who not previously been involved in the political process, set a deposit that would actually seem to be an active deterrent to doing so. I think if this is going to happen again, and I think there is a case to be made, assuming this doesn't fall on its feet, that the 2016 elections are going to be more interesting than the ones we're having currently. I think that's something that the government needs to look very closely at.
Right, about the deposit, it's huge, isn't it?
And it's not encouraging.
More than you have to pay to be an MP.
Absolutely. And it's not encouraging independent people, which is what the government said they wanted. Rather than party political people, they wanted independents to stand. And yet they placed this massive barrier in the way of that happening. Now, you know, we are all very concerned about about this new system, but it is absolutely imperative that people go out and vote. I can't emphasise this enough. And as Ian says, we've got to try and see if we can make this work. The worst thing possible would be for people to stay at home, because if the extremists, particularly the right wing, can mobilise their vote, and it's their topic, if you like, law and order it tends to be hijacked by the right wing. If they can get their support out and other reasonable people don't go out and vote, they will hijack this. I mean, huge constituencies, a lot of money to participate in it. I mean, I think we can all sympathise with the argument that if there's a vote, you should use it. Yeah. But it's an uphill task, especially for poor communities, especially for ethnic minority communities.
No, it is absolutely. But as both Ian and Brian have mentioned, it's done. Now we have to do our best to make it a success. From Engage, we've been going up and down the country, holding various events. We've been leafleting during the month of Ramadan. We've got a website, getoutandvote.info, to inform people of this election that's taking place. For example, in 3 days' time, the electoral register closes to actually vote in it. So we're telling people to make sure that they're registered to vote. 15th of November, it's a Thursday. It's going to be a rainy day. A lot of people are not going to be really bothered to come out. It is an autumn cold day. So we're encouraging people, where possible, to use postal ballots, postal votes. We've also held hustings for people to encourage that conversation. We've written a manifesto highlighting a lot of key issues that the Muslim community have with policing, like Islamophobia. At the moment, only the Metropolitan Police record Islamophobia as a specific hate crime flag, whereas around the country it's recorded under different categories. But also stop and search. It's a massive issue, stop and search. Engaging with the Muslim community in a partnership approach is very important. And also the threat of the far right, the EDL, we've seen how much chaos and panic it's caused. So it does affect people. And when you talk to people on that level, I mean, we recently did an event in Birmingham where over 150 people turned up. They all felt engaged. They felt, actually, yeah, this does affect me. But it's just sad that the government did not put enough investment in the beginning to have those conversations from early on. But we must do our best to make sure everyone gets out and votes.
Ian, I mean, if you're going to bring politics into the debate about the police, some people will, I think, rightly say, well, the police do have a political role in the society. They have some concerns, as I've mentioned, the stop and search things, but we could talk about what happened with Mark Duggan, we could talk about what happened with the student Alfie Meadows, the death of Ian Tomlinson. These have been very, very high profile political cases involving the police. If this reform works in the way that you hope it might, how do you think it will impact on those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big call to say that if PCCs had been in place and were working effectively, then none of those abuses of power would have happened. But at the same time, what those examples and the recent revelations around Hillsborough have indicated to us is that there are all sorts of good reasons for trying to make the police as responsive and transparent and accountable for what they do as we feasibly can, and for not resting on the idea that they are just professionals who know what they're doing and they can be left to get on with it. So finding mechanisms, and there are others, of course, complaints commissions and the like, through which we can make the police more transparent and accountable, seem to me to be vital to the health of a democratic and pluralistic society. Which all underscores my reason for saying, for all that there are faults with this process, I'll echo the comments of the other two contributors, that we really have to get people engaged around these issues. And the political process is the place where, in a democracy, we argue about stop and search and police power and where priorities should lie and what kind of crime should focus attention. And the issues that affect Muslim communities in particular that have just been listed are all important issues. They're not going to go away. And the Muslim community, as with other communities, have got to find a way of ensuring that they are on the agenda of those who get themselves elected on the 15th of November.
Brian, if it doesn't have an effect on those very high-profile questions about civil liberties, the ones that I mentioned, therefore, in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, people are going to say that was flannel, aren't they?
Yes, this has got to make a difference. I think where the government is hoping it will make most difference is in terms of the priorities that are set for the police, more in line with what people want the police to be doing. I think the other issues around stop and search, around deaths in custody, I think we need to look for more radical reforms than simply the police and crime commissioners. I think we need radical reform of the so-called Independent Police Complaints Commission, for example, in order to restore confidence of many communities, not only in the police but also in the police complaints system.
I mean, that's an interesting point. What do you think the government's point is here? Because it probably isn't the one that we've just been discussing. No. Where do you think they think this will take them?
Well, I think what the government are hoping is that the police will start doing the things that their voters would like them to be doing. The usual complaints when people are stopped for speeding. Why aren't you doing something more useful like arresting burglars and robbers? That sort of argument.
So do you think, in a way, this is a kind of Tory Shire's charter for reorienting the police?
I think it's a way in which the government are trying to say we are in charge of the police, that local people should be telling the police what to do. And as a consequence, if the police priorities do change it in that way, then the Conservative Party will be able to take some credit for it.
Is that a concern for you, that there's a kind of, perhaps behind this, let's put it this way, there's a kind of Daily Mail agenda that, you blat a burglar, and if the police complain about it or anybody else complains about it, well then...
There is, absolutely, and those were the arguments very early on when this bill was discussed, that a lot of us were making, that it will do that. But I think, we just have to refocus. I think one very important thing we mustn't forget is it's our responsibility to make the police more transparent. And I think we far too often we advocate and we kind of abdicate rather our responsibility by not engaging in the process. I mean, if more of us were engaged in the political process, especially with this PCC, if you have a very big turnout, then that PCC, he or she will have no choice but to be accountable to the electorate. But if only a few of us turn up, and few of us actually throughout the 5 years, as Ian mentioned, put the PCC under scrutiny, then the police will carry on doing what they're saying. But we should not kid ourselves. This isn't a magic bullet. It's not going to fix everything. There are far more important processes and systems like the IPCC that need to be looked at before we can perhaps get to a place where we can say, we've got a policing system that is accountable, that is transparent, and that is serving its local community.
As my friend here has said, it is only the Metropolitan Police, for example, that measure Islamophobia, but it's only because of the work that my friend has done and the Muslim Safety Forum that the Metropolitan Police are recording that Muslim hate crime separately. It just shows the importance of the community engaging, making its voice heard in order to bring about change. We don't necessarily have to rely on the new police and crime commissioners, although that is another, they could provide another real opportunity for the community to engage with and try and change the agenda of the police, not just by engaging directly with senior police officers, but now engaging with these police and crime commissioners.
Ian, last few seconds here. So do you see a genuine political battlefield opening up here, a right-left battlefield about what should drive police concerns?
It may not be a straightforward right-left battlefield, but I think we need to be clear about one thing. I think it's right that the idea the Conservatives had when they introduced this policy was to introduce a figure who was either going to be a kind of constant thorn in the side of chief constables, making them kind of get on with the job of fighting crime, or is to form some kind of dynamic crime-fighting duo with the chief constable, a kind of Bratton, Giuliani in New York imported to the English cities and counties. But this is a constitutional reform, so it doesn't really matter one hoot what the Conservative Party thinks should happen. The only thing they've now got any control over is what their candidates say and do when they stand for election on the Conservative ticket.
OK, and Ian, I'm going to have to bring you to a close there because we're running out of time. If you want to continue the debate, you can get hold of us on Twitter now at Islam Channel CA. That's CA for current affairs, so that's at Islam Channel CA. And we hope that you'll join the debate both online and in future episodes of the Politics and Media programme.